Guard your money jealously. We work hard for this resource. Guard it jealously. Learn to say no. What is the point of having a budget that you don't stick with? There's something called the psychology of money. So there's a very strong relationship between you as an individual and your emotional state being. If you're a disorganized person in your space, in your life, there's a very strong correlation and a high probability that you will not be able to manage and plan your money. The first thing is just to confront debt. You know how many people I've met in my entire life, professional life, that had not confronted their debts. Here's the trick. You always need to be truthful with your creditor. What I see and what my experience has been is the opposite. So when people owe, they run away from their debt. Again, that's why we're saying these loans must be purposeful. What are you going to do? There must be an asset backing it, and asset must give you a return. If you are getting a loan that doesn't support the asset and does not give you a return, then it's not a good loan.
So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show today, Mrs. Dineo. What is up, everybody? Welcome to Deep Dive Sessions. My name is Mpomo Tauro. I'll go with the show to bring you and I in proximity to the people and ideas that will show us that it is possible and it can be done and eventually help us achieve on our dreams and on our goals. Today, we have a special guest. We have a woman that has 25 years of experience in the financial industry, the MD of Loago Financial Services. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show today, Mrs. Dineo Saleshando. Let's talk about Let's talk about music. I know it's very, very far-fetched. If you were to take financial advice from any artist in Botswana, who would it be?
I'm trying to also take a scan around the artist in Botswana, trying to think.
Yes.
It's very difficult to say. And I think that's the gist of our discussion this evening. Because not all that you see on the outside is generally what you see and happens in the inside. And I think that's why we are here to unpack the mystery that is management of money. Thanks. Yeah.
So there's none. It's tough, guys.
It's a tough one.
It's tough.
Yeah.
Anyway, you've been in this space for so long. You've seen a lot. Let us start by just the basics of money management at an individual level. So the money gurus would say it's good for you as an individual to have about 6 months, like a stash of 6 months cash, that if you lose your job or your business goes bust or anything like that, you can be able to bounce back. So what are some of your main tips on an individual level for somebody, especially look at the demographic that's here, to start with in terms of just getting control of our finances?
Yeah, thank you so much for that. If I look across the room, I think guys must be probably under 30, under 25, most of you. And I'm glad that...
40-year-old. I'm joking.
Yeah, so I'm glad that you are taking money matters seriously at a personal level, hence your presence here tonight. I think first things first, there's something called the psychology of money. So there's a very strong relationship between you as an individual and your emotional state being. What do I mean by this? So if you're a disorganized person in your space, in your life, you're not able to plan your day, you're not able to plan anything of your life, there's a very strong correlation and a high probability that you will not be able to manage and plan your money.
So if your room is messy.
Well. So if your room is messy, don't expect that your money matters will be clean. It goes without saying. So there's a very strong correlation between the emotive side of us and how we manage the money. At your age, and I'm glad that at this age, and hopefully touch wood, you have not done big money mistakes, right? So the first thing is just knowing the psychology of money and understanding what it means to you in relation to what it is that you want to achieve out of life, right? So as you start your money journey and you start your businesses, even as you manage sometimes your school stipend, your monthly allowances that you get to school, it's not so much about how much you have on hand, but it is so much more to do with how do I manage my money? What exactly do I want to achieve? What are my own financial goals? So how many of us here can sit here and, by show of hand, to say that I have clear money goals, right? Fantastic if you're doing it. But what I've realized over my career is that a lot of us wobble on with life without a very clear motive of what it is that they want money to do for them. The result is that they therefore not manage their money. So in their process of not managing their money, they ultimately then fall into the trap of money mismanagement. First things first. If you are a student, for instance, some of you may be students, how do you want to manage that money? What it is that you want to achieve in the short term and in the long term? Because once you have that clarity in your thoughts, you will then begin to understand how and what it is that you need to do with your money. There are basic principles of money that we follow. And the basic principles, again, they have nothing to do with how much, but it has got everything to do with the attitude when you hold that money. We can talk about a 1,000 pula, 1,900 pula student allowance, right? So firstly, we need to think, what are my expenses, right? What are my expenses? Okay, I need to, take a cab on a monthly basis, on a daily basis to go to school. How much does that come to on a monthly basis? So the first thing is that we then need to budget for this money. What are the expenses that I incur on a monthly basis? The second thing that I want to do is that how much money should I be putting aside? And we want to build that skill from early on, because if you are unable to build a skill of saving from a young age, it becomes very difficult because it's a habit, and habits are formed over a period of time. If you're unable to form that habit of saving, even from that 1,900 pula, if you're unable to save, even if it's 100 pula from that, chances are you will still struggle to save as an elder person and as you work or as you become an entrepreneur in your business. The other thing is that we also must then have our investment goals. So remember that money in a bank account right now in Botswana perspective, at best you will get a return of 3%. The higher savers will probably get your 5% per annum.
But inflation.
Right? So what you want to do is that you want to be able to live comfortably within your means, within the money that you have in terms of the expenses. You want to be able to pay yourself first. That's why we say pay yourself first when you have money. So pay yourself first. When we say pay yourself first, we are saying take some of the money and put it away, because you must have goals to create a buffer. And a buffer, it doesn't matter whether you're a student or you are working or you are a pensioner. You will always have incidentals. You will always have emergencies. You will always need to have some money put away that you can always tap into for various reasons. But also, most importantly, is that you want to create that buffer to be able then to start to think about your investments. Right. So you need to start to think about these things, your relationship with money. What are the goals that you want to achieve financially from a savings perspective, from an investment perspective? And therefore, you will be able to then plan and create a budget that speaks to your financial goals. And one of the things I always tell people is that it's not just okay for you to say, okay, I now have a budget, but you also need to have a budget that you know you will stick with. So it's not a budget for the sake of a budget. You need to be able to review this budget on a regular basis and say, does it get me to where I want to go from my financial goal perspective, right? Example, I am a student at BAC. I have an allowance of 1,900 pula, and my allowance comes, and my initial reaction is to go and buy, the interesting drinks that people drink nowadays when they receive that allowance, right? But the truth is, Are you even thinking about this money? Are you critically analyzing and having a direct conversation with self to say, if I'm buying this 6-pack of something, how is that helping me towards my financial goal? Is it adding or is it minusing? So you have no choice but to always critically or be critical when you hold money and when you want to manage your money very well. Yeah.
So I'm thinking about this. You touched on so much actually right now. You touched even up on the relationship we have with our money.
Yeah.
And so my initial thought is this, because I've had conversations even with people, when we talk about saving, when somebody says, right now, I can probably save maybe $50, but it's not motivating me because it's $50. And then next month it's $50, it's $50. And so I want your take on it, especially this, but I want us to go a little bit backwards. I want to give you a scenario. Say right now, I earn maybe 6,000 a month and I'm deep into debt and I'm struggling. Even the money that's coming in is going off to pay debt. How then do I start to crawl out of this hole? I'm getting 6,000, but it's like a 72 pool, more accounting, when everything else is gone. How do I crawl out of this situation?
Yeah.
Like roadmap it for us.
Yeah, so I just gave an example of a student. You are now wanting for us to talk about an example of somebody who's possibly earning some form of income, right?
Yes.
So it could be income that is coming from your salary, from your employment, or it could be income that's coming from your own business or whatever else that you are doing, right? Now, when you get to that level, remember the basics, right? So you're thinking you need to save, we need to invest, and that's your fundamental, right? So that's the first thing. When you start to work now, you now start to think a little bit broader. So when I say a little bit broader, what I mean by that is that you need to start to think now, as I'm working and I'm navigating my working world. So there are 3 things, again, that we need to start to look at. How do I optimize my money using these 3 instruments? 2 of them we've already talked about. But the first thing is that we also want to do what? To protect our, so we want to take our life and scan it. By the time you start to earn, you are earning 6,000 pula as your gross income, but your net pay is 72 pula. You definitely know that you've done something fundamentally wrong. And you've made fundamentally erroneous decisions with your money. Because the first thing that you want to do is that you want to take a scan around your life, around the risks that you are facing as an individual, as well as your assets, right? So you are looking at yourself and say, what if I die today? How will I be buried? Okay, I will take a funeral cover. I will take a life cover, in case, some of these incidentals happen. Let's say that, I have a child and I want the child to have some form of an education policy. So I start to cover my risk. I may say that, I may be living in a house. I want to protect all these assets. How do I protect them? So I insure. So what we want to do is that once we get to work there, we start to insure. So this is basically to acknowledge the risks that cover us. Because tell you what, partly the reason why we are not able to manage our money is, again, like I said, is the incidentals that have not been budgeted for. And sometimes it's a loss of a laptop, right? Now imagine if you have a laptop, you are working, or you are even a student, and that laptop has not been insured. So what that means is that you now need to create a budget to go and buy that laptop, correct? But if you flip that scenario and say, okay, I have acknowledged my risk, and my risk includes theft or my assets, my laptop can, something could happen to it. I need to be able to cover it and simply go to an insurance company and say, please replace. Or this is, a death incident in my family or self, the insurance will take care of that. So the first thing that we want to do is that we want to insure our risks. Once we've insured our risks, we obviously look at our expenses, as I've talked to you about. We stay within our expenses. We then want to look at our savings plan. Because by and large, at that point, we need to start to be saying, okay, if I'm earning 6,000 At a minimum, I should have at least a buffer, a savings buffer of 3 times of that amount. I should have 18,000, in other words, in my savings account at any point in time, at a bare minimum. But obviously, this is, should be aligned with your own financial goals. But at a minimum, you want to do that. So you want to start to save and put a buffer for that. And then the last thing is obviously now starting to look at the savings and saying, how much of this portion do I want to take of this and invest it? Remember that you are never going to maximize wealth by saving alone. So you save so that you can then go back and look at the options available for you for investment.
You can save yourself to wealth.
Exactly. So you do that. So this is now your 6,000 that you've done with, right? Once you've done that, and let's say now you have to take a loan, right? You now want to start to, build, or you want to buy a car, or whatever the case may be that you want to use for as long as that loan is purposeful and you are certain that you've done your assessment and that loan will add value to your own financial goals. There's something that we call a debt-to-income ratio, right? Now, that debt-to-income ratio must be a certain ratio. That's why they call it a ratio. In other words, it must not exceed X amount of your salary. When you are earning 6,000 as gross, but you end up going to the bank, what goes to the bank is 72 pula. You're already telling us that 95% of your money is now spent on debt. Now, if you are spending your money on debt, you are telling us you will not be able to save. You are telling us you will not be able to pay your insurances. You are telling us that you will not have the opportunity to invest, which is now where you now get to grow and build wealth. So you are telling us that you are not going to do that. The result of which is that you're going to be you're going to be milling in this, this hole, this black hole. So every month at 72 pula, you and I know the reality that you will never live off 72 pula. It's impossible. You need to pay rental, you need to, you come to work, you eat, you clothe yourself, and plus you need to insure, you need to save, you need to do, look at investment opportunities. So at that point in time, I would say that you would have then failed the first test. But we acknowledge now that you failed the first test. So now how do we help you to get out of it? There are several tools that you can use to get yourself out of it. There are multiple tools. Obviously, your 25 minutes today is not sufficient for us to dig deep into some of these tools that are available for us to get out of debt. The first thing is just to confront debt. You know how many people I've met in my entire life, professional life, that had not confronted their debts. People are milling. They have an idea of why they are milling in debt, but they don't know exactly why they are milling in debt because they have not had the opportunity just to sit and confront the debt. And by confronting the debt, I simply mean that you are going to sit and say, Dineo, who do you owe? And you list them. 1, how much do I owe this person? What is the principal amount on this loan? What is the interest on this loan? How long is this loan for? Is this loan in arrears? Yes or no, right? So you need to have that truth with yourself in your own private space and say, okay, oops, I actually thought I owed 200,000. By the way, I owe 2 million. And that's the reality. And that's the reality people they find themselves in. During my time at the banks, you ask somebody, and I always made people to sit and say, okay, because normally what they will do is say, hey, Dineo Saleshando, hey, can I have a problem? I have a debt here and there. And then the minute they start to say, I have a debt here and there, you ask them to sit down, right? And to say to them, please be truthful to yourself. I'm at the bank. I can give you the money as a banker, take another loan. But it's also not in my interest to continue to indebt you. So confront your debts. And it was always a shocking revelation to all of them, without exception. It's like, I never even realized this, this is how much I owe. Because until you have that realization, you will not be able to acknowledge the extent to which you are indebted and the extent to which, or the aggression that you then need to be able to get yourself out of debt.
Do you start with the smallest or the biggest? Or
So there are various tools that you can use, basically. Sometimes for purposes of wanting to motivate yourself, now that you've gotten the realization, sometimes you may say, okay, let me start with the easier ones first, the small ones first, right? And you have to do what? You now build a budget. So that budget acknowledges that, okay, I owe 100,000 there. There's another 10,000. Let me start with this 10,000. But my goal, remember the thing that's going to make you act is the action. And you need to proclaim it. You need to write it down. My goal is to clear my first 10,000 Pula loan in the next 12 months. But it doesn't mean that your 100,000 Pula loan, you leave it. You then go back to your creditors where possible. One of the things that we normally encourage people to do is that you need to go to your creditors and say to my creditors, I've got a 100,000 Pula debt. I found myself in this position. I don't think I'll be able to support the repayments on this 100,000 plus my other living expenses. Can we restructure? Your creditors, including the banks, they will allow you to restructure the facilities, correct?
What does it mean to restructure?
So your restructure a facility simply means that where you had a loan, for instance, and this loan was 100,000, which was a loan for 2 years, and it was at interest rate 30% per annum. Restructuring the loan simply means that I'm going to my creditor, I'm going to say I'm unable to pay within 2 years. Please allow me to pay in 36 months or in 48 months. That's number one. Two, may I request that you reconsider the interest rate you are charging me also on the loan? Okay. Because then what that does... You
can do that.
You can. There are so many instruments that allows you to do a restructuring. Here's the trick. You always need to be truthful with your creditor. What I see and what my experience has been is the opposite. So when people owe, they run away from their debt, which doesn't help. The first thing you do is to run to the creditor and say, my creditor, here I am. It's possible you may have lost a job, for instance, right? So you've lost a job, or somehow your business did not go according to plan. You had this loan. Unfortunately, you are not able to pay this loan. You run to the creditor. The creditor can restructure for as long as you are truthful and you stick with what you have agreed on. Nice. Other options that you can look at is say, but some interests loans are high interests. So credit cards, for instance, can anybody take a wild guess how much an interest is on a credit card? Wild guess. Yeah, that is what you pay on a personal loan.
That's a personal loan.
Your credit card is almost hitting 40.
Yeah.
That's 40% per annum. That's your credit card. So every time you get that credit card, remember that as much as you are charged on usage, that 40% is huge.
40%?
40%. There are 37% and 39%. You see? That's where they are ranging. Yeah. So you then want to say to yourself, okay, let me also rather take the approach that these other ones, the ones that are high interest yielding, let me then consolidate them with the ones that are lower in interest, right? So you can say, okay, I'm going to take my credit card balance and then now amortize it into a personal loan so that I can pay this as personal loan because my personal loan interest is much lower.
Can you please repeat that slowly? Slowly.
So you can do a debt consolidation.
Yes.
So with your debt consolidation, what you want to achieve with that is that you want to take your high interest rate products, like your credit card, and consolidate them into a lower interest rate product. For example, a personal loan.
How is that done?
So it's simply an application process. This loan is too much. The credit card balance is 20,000 Pula. It's at 40,000 Pula. I want to close. It's a conversation you can have with your banker. I want to close my credit card. The balance, please consolidate it into my personal account so that I can continue to pay as a personal loan with the terms and the rates that personal loan versus the higher interest rates. This is more pronounced on micro-lending, by the way. Remember that on micro-lending, there are lenders that charge will 15%, 20% per month, correct? Per month. Annualize that. You are looking at 240%. You took a loan that is 1,000. Before you do anything with that loan, you already owe how much? That's already more than 20,000 you're owing from that 1,000 loan, right? So what you want to do with, people like that, you encourage them to close those, very expensive microlenders. Again, get back into your lower interest products, your personal loans that are more palatable, so that they are able to breathe, give them breathing space on their salary or on their income.
Lovely.
Yeah.
I want us to go further into debts, and in just the management of debts. We talked about, I think there's one called snowballing effect, where you kind of, you start with the smallest and go up in net. So I want us to just carry forward with what we're talking about in terms of debts. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So thank you so much for that. Productive engagements we had during break time.
Yes. And they should be here. They should be here.
I think it should also guide in terms of the discussions, because as I was telling him, money issues are wide. So at a point in time, you need to zone into specifics around money. Some people have interest in investments. Some people have interest in debt management. Some people are interested in how to manage money and all of that. But anyway, so yes, in terms of debt, so one of the things that I really wanted to, emphasize, especially when we start to think about debt in terms of good debt and as well as loan debt. So one of the things that people also don't get an appreciation of is that, again, these are numbers. So you get a loan, perhaps a mortgage for 20 years, right? Normally, you can get the mortgage loans up to 20 years at a point in time. You get a 500,000 loan over 20 years, right? Interest rates on the mortgages, they tend to vary. They are variable. They are variable because they get linked to what we call a prime lending rate. So somebody at the bank will tell you, okay, you want a loan, it's going to cost you prime plus whatever percentage. The reality, and which is why I want this fact to be known by a lot of people, is that in the 20 years, if you just leave this 500,000 as is, can somebody take a wild guess how much money you'll pay back after 20 years?
It's probably more than 500,000 itself.
500,000? 1.5 million. So you're close. So you will pay back 1.2 million. That's how much you pay in terms of this loan. I get 20 years. What people don't understand is that, for instance, if you were to take that loan and then that same loan and say to yourself, especially the ones that are working, and say to yourself, Kinali an adjustment, a salary adjustment, April of every year. We have a salary adjustment. Instead of using that money elsewhere, I'm going to take 500 bula of the adjustment that I have. Every year, whenever I have an adjustment, I'm going to take that adjustment and plug it into my loans to reduce debt. What happens is that when I take 500 bula and I put it as an additional payment into my mortgage account or no lower 20 years, do you know what happens? Your mortgage will finish drastically now in 15 years. It's no longer 20 years. Drastically, you've reduced your mortgage to 15 years. Just by adding that extra 500 on a monthly basis, beyond your normal installment. And the interest, instead of paying the 1.2, now your total payments now will be a 900,000. That's a saving of more than 300. Do you understand? So that's how we need to be thinking about this money. Even when the prime rate, for instance, changes, right? You are all aware of the prime rate. Like, there is a bank rate basically that is set by the central bank, although it's not central by the central bank anymore. The banks now set their own prime lending rate. So let's say, for instance, like right now, yesterday or 2 days ago, prime lending rate changed.
Yeah.
from 6.76 to 6.51. If you keep your normal installment, because what happens is that when the interest rates reduce, your installments also get reduced and the bank reduced that. So if you're paying, like, for instance, in this one, you would have been paying something like 4.9, and you keep on carrying on and just leave that. You save again, you kill 1 year. That loan is no longer 20 years, it's now 90 years by just leaving the installment as it were. So you have that option and that power to go to the bank and say, but I don't want you to reduce, just keep it, because in any case, you are already used to paying that amount of money.
Right.
So just don't take it back. Just say to them, as a way of reducing my debt and pay my debt faster, let me leave it as is. Don't touch my loan, so that they continue to pay fast. But what is more powerful is when you now take additional, your salary adjustments, plug them into your mortgage repayments. You will see that you drastically kill 5 years of that mortgage instantly by just doing that. And it won't take, it really is not a big pain for you, because in any case, you've already been paying. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, that is a lot.
So these are some of the things that, the tools that are available that people don't appreciate or don't know about. And I think it's important that you need to think about them. One of the things also you want to do with your loans is that beware of somebody that says to you, I'm going to give you a personal loan of 700,000 Pula for 7-8 years, right? Can I also give you a shocking revelation? Yeah, 700 Pula, yeah? So somebody says to you, and it's a personal loan. So a personal loan the rates tend to be much higher than on the mortgage side, right? So somebody says to you, you've seen adverts, we issue loans up to 700,000, okay? So you get somebody at 700,000, you give them a loan at 700,000, and your interest rate is 29% per annum, okay? And that loan is for 8 years. Take a wild guess how much you're gonna pay back. 1.8 million Pula. This is an amount that is not backed by any asset. Remember, that is a personal loan. Again, that's why we're saying these loans must be purposeful. What are you going to do? There must be an asset backing it, and asset must give you a return. If you are getting a loan that doesn't support the asset and does not give you a return, then it's not a good loan. And by that, I don't mean like maybe a physical. Sometimes you may take an educational loan, which is good. You may want to develop a skill for yourself, or you may want to develop a skill for your dependents, or take them to school generally. You are investing, there must be a return that comes back with it. So it's not always a tangible sort of asset that you are looking at, but it could be things like education, building yourself a skill. I know some people that have, taught themselves skills like coding, and they use now that as to earn more income. There is AI right now. How are we using, as we sit here as a group, how are we using AI now to try and create our own little businesses on the side? Do you understand? Yeah. How are we using those tools so that we can now build extra income streams? The other thing you mentioned, by the way, Mem, is additional income streams. So as we build assets, and the last thing that we want to do is to have one stream of income. It is detrimental because it does not have the what-if scenario. And the what-if scenario the effect of that tends to get, detrimental because you have that one thing that you are dependent on. And if somebody takes that one thing that you are dependent on, which is maybe a salary, where do you go after that? Do you understand? So this thing, the what if, I've talked about it on my LinkedIn pages, the stress test and the what if. This thing should scare you enough that, one, you should not take these loans unnecessarily. And then secondly, that you also need to be starting to think, but I am overly concentrated on my salary as my income level, my only income source. How can I build other income streams? Do you understand? So it could start with, and don't think big things, guys. Start with your hobbies, things that do effortlessly, right? Things that don't take energy from you. I like baking, as I said, and I will do it. It doesn't feel like a chore for me because I just anyway love to bake. So even when somebody says I need an order 100 cupcakes, I'm quite happy to do it. It doesn't feel like I've been working. But at the end of it, I get my 2,000 pula there. Do you understand? So that one income stream must really scare you enough. In fact, that should be the one reason why you should really think 10 times before you get a loan, because the what if is always there. What if I lose my job? How am I going to survive? What if I have to leave my job for whatever reason? What if the business doesn't do well and I have these loans? What are the options available for me?
So I wanted to also touch on something in terms of, especially when you talk about these interests and homeowners. In terms of, can you just give us, I love the way you gave us those statistics, especially some of the dangers that could exist for homeowners if, say, your interest rate kibukan and then it goes a little bit higher. What happens when that happens?
Yeah, so there are two things. The one thing is that we need to understand the structure of the loans, right? So more often than not, and I've seen this until today, when you engage with the client and the client wants a loan, their mind is so fixated on getting that loan, they actually forget the blueprint, the footnotes. And that those footnotes are important because they dictate to you how much additional are you paying on this loan. There are many fees that are attached to loans that people don't know about. Firstly, when you get your loan, you get your what? Your loan origination fees, correct? They are built into some lenders. They build that into the principal amount of the loan. If you got a 1,000 and the loan origination fee is 10%, so you're adding 100 pula on that before you amortize. So there's a difference between amortizing 1,000 pula to 1,100. You are already adding a layer to what the principal amount you are getting. There are fees. You need to also understand fees. What fees are available and attached to this loan? I have fees traditionally, prepayments. Do you know that we penalize you for you to finish off your loan, right? Early. So we penalize you. When you come and say, now I'm just going to clear my loan, we will say, okay, we will work out a penalty interest. Do you know how much that is? And these amounts, these are the things you need to weigh. Do I clear? Is it beneficial for me to do that at this point in time or not, depending on where the loan is? There are other fees like collection fees. Lenders, especially in the micro-lending space, there are also collection fees on a monthly basis. They get attached to those. And ultimately, your installment may start off as 1,000 pula. It may end up as 1.3 or 1.4 because of these additional charges. You need to be aware of them. And then secondly, make it a habit to also start to think, when you buy a car, when you buy a mortgage, a house, all of these things have added costs. Your car needs to be maintained. You need to change tires. You need to put petrol. Are you even taking all of those associated costs into this? If you're buying a house, are you also taking into account the maintenance of this house? Whatever needs to happen around this house, the insurances for these houses. Imagine if it's a house for 2 million pula or 3 million pula. That becomes a big thing, It really becomes a big thing. So are you looking after that? But anyway, notwithstanding that, we need to get into a habit of stress testing our budgets and our finances to say, right now I'm earning 5,000 pula. And these are my expenses, this is my insurance, and this is my savings plan on a monthly basis. And I have some debts also I'm trying to manage, so I build that into the plan. The question is, how often do you stress test to say, what if interest rates were to increase by 0.25%? What will that do to my loan, to my income? What if they were to decrease? So you start to weigh and say, I don't think I like what I'm seeing. Because you need to be able to say, okay, I'm paying currently 1,000. If I have to add, 0.25% of that, can I afford it now? What is going to happen to my budget? So you need to start to build all of those things, which is why you want to be able to compound your money so that at every step of the way, your money is increasing. Yeah? Your money, you are building towards your wealth. Your money must increase. You must maximize it. either through multiple income lines, saving, converting those savings at periodic points into investments, and having a varied portfolio of those investments, short-term, long-term, high risk, medium risk, low risk.
Yeah. Awesome. I want us also now to talk about the power of compounding. Walk us through that also in a way that, because this is something that when we look at now, I know we've been talking about debts and we've been crying. So we're going to now move to the good stuff in our investment and the power of compounding when you put your money to the right usage. Walk us through that.
Yeah. So power of compounding. So as I said, a basic principle for you to build wealth, you need to compound. And you need to compound upwards, not downwards. What do we mean by that? What we mean by that is that you can achieve compounding by sticking to a budget. That one, you need to be very, very clear from the beginning. You have to do a budget. You have to stick to the budget. It must allow you to save so that you can then start to do investments. Now, what you want to do with these investments is that you are looking at your money grow. As your money grows, you are either reinvesting into the instruments that you have built or you've invested in, or you are looking at alternative investments. So you are taking these returns and now plugging them also into other investments, correct? So in that way, you are building like a snowballing of, compounding effect. What you want to do is that you constantly want to be either getting dividends, and you get dividends by applying your money into companies. So you may invest in companies and say, okay, I'm giving Luago as an example, Luago Financial Services. I'm going to invest into Luago Financial. This will be my return. If I've plugged in 10,000 pula there, then I will get how much? 1,500 pula as a return on an annual basis. Yeah. You also be wanting instruments that are interest yielding, right? So you may say, okay, at a bank, for instance, let me rather put not on a savings account, but let me look at a high-yielding interest account within the bank. And normally those ones are your fixed deposits. You may want to put your money there and say, okay, let me see that. What do you do? It's normally what do you do with that return that now creates that compounding effect. So you then decide, do I reinvest? And when you want to build wealth, you're not going to be able to say, I'm taking. So is the ability, which is why they say building wealth is a very slow, patient process. So you can't do it every year you are taking out. And that's where the power of compounding comes in. So if you've put money into Luago Financial Services, it's giving you 15%, you reinvest it. It's no longer 10,000, it's now 11,500 pool, right? You invest that 11,500 pool, it gives you now 15% of that 11,500. I get it. And sometimes you may say, okay, maybe there's another investment opportunity that will give me a return of 18%. So you may take the returns from there and say, okay, I'm going to now plug those into that return of 18%. It then multiplies again. Do you understand? So it then continues to multiply. The trick with the compounding effect is not for you to take when it matures. It's for you to reinvest and continue to reinvest for a good period of time for you to realize the return.
That's lovely. It's because I was actually studying this. I think Warren Buffett talked about it. It says it's the eighth wonder of the world, the power of compounding. And I was looking at different, obviously I studied across the world. I looked at stuff in America like Vanguard, where you can invest. It's fractional investing, where you can take your $100 and it fractionally invested into the top 500 companies in the S&P 500. Of which is an index fund. I wanted to ask you about some of these investment instruments locally. For the longest time, I've looked for an index fund. I've not found it. I don't know if you know of any index fund that we can find locally.
Look, there are funds that get pulled, and I think BFM does that very well.
Okay.
In terms of, here's an instrument, an investment opportunity. It needs, 5 million pula. But you and I don't have the 5 million pula. So you put in your 100 pula on a monthly basis. So the funds get pulled together and then they get invested, and that's how you get a return. So they may not call them index funds. I don't know what they call them, but they are funds that, pooled funds, unit trusts, that they have that support those sort of objectives.
Right.
Yeah. So it is not a bad idea. Like that's what I'm saying. That with investments, you really want to be looking at these investments on a regular basis, understanding what exactly are they seeking to achieve and how are they fitting into your compounding sort of effect.
Lovely.
Yeah.
And now, when it comes to, you gave us a few rules. Number one, 40%. Your debt should not exceed 40% of your earnings. So if on a let's say I earn 10,000 Pula, can you just kindly walk us through the percentages of, just a ballpark figure for us? Maybe this goes to investing, this goes to education, this goes to what, this goes to what, this goes to what? As in your position.
Yeah, again, it really depends on the personal objectives, the personal goal objectives.
Yes.
What I want to say is that be very clear on your savings goal. So your savings percentage needs to be prescribed. Some people may say a minimum of 10, some say a minimum of 20. It really depends on what it is that you want to achieve. So between that 10 and 20%, you figure out depending on your goals. Your 40% total in terms of the loans should not exceed that. And then what you also want to do is that you want to make sure that there is a provision, especially for the insurances. Remember that your investments are going to come from the savings. So your savings on a monthly basis must be reflective of your investment strategy. So you may say that my investment strategy in 12 months, I want to have, a pocket of, a savings of 20,000. You need to work that back into your budget and create that. So it's like I said, issues of personal finance are really personal. Sorry,
Awesome.
They are personal. So we need to need to look at you need to look at each case at an individual basis.
Lovely. So what are your biggest you walked us through red flags, yes, but right now for let's say a 25-year-old who's getting into the workplace, what are some of those things that you want us never, what are the things that you should not touch? You talked about getting a personal loan, getting a loan for your first house, which you said try to shy away from that. What are some of those maybe 2 or 3 tips that you could give, especially to youngsters that are starting to get in the workplace environment, and even those that have been there for 10 years or less?
Yeah. So as I said, I think you need to be very clear it takes a lot of effort and risk to try and build wealth. The biggest, I think, a lot of people can build, but it takes so much more for people to maintain their wealth because now it requires a certain skill to be able to maintain and keep your wealth and maintain your wealth. So one of the things, as I said, is that you really need to guard your money jealously. We work hard for this resource. Guard it jealously. Learn to say no. Because what is the point of having a budget that you don't stick with? So you need to be able to create those budgets. You need to be careful and cautious. You need to be a critical thinker when it comes to your money. Think about how you can turn your hobbies into, your side businesses. Because your one salary, trust me, at a point in time, that's why a lot of people are in trouble. Turn your hobbies. And right now, I think you have a lot more opportunities because of what is happening around online. AI, people are doing businesses around AI. People are YouTubing and they are commercializing their YouTubes. People are commercializing their social media presence. Those are the things that you do without, sitting at home. Be frugal. There's no how that you will build wealth if you are not frugal, if you are just the spender. Avoid the temptation to go off budget unnecessarily, impulse spending. Because I know that at our age, we tend to do a lot of impulse, spending. And we are manipulated by our own peers. Because your own peer will say, when you say, okay, let's pass by whatever and buy something, They don't get it when you say, no, I don't have money. Not that you don't have the money. You have the money, but you've budgeted for it.
You don't have the money
so
for this.
Stick with those budgets and be very rigid and be accountable to yourselves, guys. I don't think there's any other way I can put it other than being accountable to yourself, because it is your money, it is your journey, and it is lonely and it is long. You need the patience and that frugality.
Thank you guys for watching this episode. We really hope you enjoyed it and learned something new. Deep Dive is dedicated to bringing you the most comprehensive and engaging information about business, personal finance, and personal development. Make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated with all our latest content. If you liked this video, give it a like to show your support and help us reach a wider audience. And don't forget to share this video with your friends and your family who may be interested. Sharing helps us grow our community and connect with like-minded individuals. Leave a comment below and give us your biggest takeaway on this episode. If you're interested in being a part of our live studio audiences, make sure to register for the next show. Can't make it to the show? No problem. Check out our Patreon page to watch the full episode and get exclusive access to more great content. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode of The Deep Dive.